As you enter the port of Alexandria, officials board your ship. They aren't looking for goods or treasures. They are looking for books. They take every piece of text they can find and bring it back to the library. This is the Library of Alexandria, the place that once stored all the knowledge of the ancient world and eventually lost everything in a huge fire. Or did it? In this video, I've gathered 7 alternative wonders of the ancient world you probably haven't heard of. Structures and buildings so impressive, it's a wonder they didn't make the official list. From the massive Circus Maximus that could hold over 3 times more spectators than the Colosseum, to the incredible gates of Babylon and the theatre where you could hear a coin drop from the top row. But first, let's take a look at one of the most impressive ports of the ancient world. This may look like an ordinary harbour, but over 2,000 years ago, this was one of the most advanced ports in the entire world. A harbour so complex it allowed an entire navy to hide from enemies. As you approach the city of Carthage, located in modern-day Tunisia, nothing seems out of the ordinary. Merchant ships enter and leave the city, loading and unloading goods from across the Mediterranean. Nothing unusual. But hidden behind the outer walls is something far more advanced. This is the military port of Carthage, specially designed for war. But why did they need the most advanced military port in the ancient world? If we zoom out on the map, one of the most powerful forces in history is located just across the sea, and for the Roman Empire, this location would give them control over the Western Mediterranean. At the center was a circular island surrounded by a ring-shaped dock. Along the edges, 2-story buildings were constructed side by side, each one housing a warship. In total, the harbour could hold up to 220 ships. Each one had a sloped ramp, allowing ships to be pulled out of the water and stored safely on land. This protected the ships from damage and made repairs much easier. But what made it truly unique was the layout. From the outside, you couldn't see any of it. The entrance was narrow and easy to defend. Once inside, the entire fleet could remain hidden, ready to deploy at a moment's notice. On the island stood a tower, giving commanders a full view of both the harbour and the open sea. From here, they could monitor incoming threats. This became especially important during the Punic Wars, where Carthage faced off against Rome in a battle for control of the Mediterranean, a story including one of the largest naval battles in history, with 290,000 crew and marines involved and a total of 680 warships. In the end, after both the Roman Empire and the Carthaginian forces had depleted their resources, Rome captured Carthage. Speaking of the Romans, later in the video we'll take a closer look at this gigantic arena in the middle of Rome, which could hold up to 250,000 spectators. But first, let's travel back to ancient Babylon. This is the Ishtar Gate, a massive entrance to one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. Built around 575 BC by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II, it was designed to impress the visitors of Babylon. At its peak, Babylon was one of the largest and most powerful cities in the world. Located along the Euphrates River, it became a center for trade, culture, and engineering. Massive walls surrounded the city, and ancient sources describe it as one of the most impressive places on Earth. It might have also been the home to the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which I explain in my video about the 7 ancient wonders. The gate was covered in bright blue bricks, and the walls were decorated with rows of detailed animals, dragons and bulls, each one carefully crafted across the walls. As you approached the city, the gate would tower above you, but the gate itself was only the beginning. Passing through it, you'd enter an over 800-meter-long road. This was the processional way, lined with even more walls covered in lions. This majestic road was used during festivals, where crowds would gather to witness religious ceremonies and royal parades. But how did they create something like this over 2,500 years ago? The secret was in the materials. The Babylonians used a technique where clay bricks were coated with minerals and exposed to fire at high temperatures. By adding copper-based compounds, they created the deep blue color that made the gate so unique. The heat turned the surface into a thin, glass-like layer, sealing the bricks and protecting them from weather and erosion. And for the animal decorations, the Babylonians didn't choose the easy solution of painting them. They were built from individually shaped bricks, each one carefully molded and glazed before being assembled like a massive puzzle. This allowed the designs to remain visible for centuries. But what happened to the gate? Over time, Babylon fell into ruin, and the structure was gradually buried beneath sand. In the early 1900s, German archaeologists excavated the site and uncovered thousands of the original bricks. Many of them were transported to Berlin, where parts of the gate were reconstructed and can still be seen today in the Pergamon Museum. Today, you can still see parts of Babylon's ruins, but not everything is ancient. In the 1980s, Iraq's leader Saddam Hussein ordered parts of the city to be rebuilt. New walls were constructed on top of the original ruins, using modern bricks stamped with his own name. Speaking of powerful empires, later in the video we'll see how the Sumerians built this massive structure over 4,000 years ago. But first, let's return to Rome and take a closer look at what may have been the largest arena ever built. As you walk into the arena, the view opens up in front of you. A massive track stretches into the distance. Tens of thousands of people fill the stands, cheering as horses race across the arena. This is Circus Maximus, a massive stadium in the heart of ancient Rome. At its peak, it could hold up to 250,000 spectators, with some estimates going even higher. To put that into perspective, that's more than 3 times the capacity of the Colosseum. With an impressive length of 621 meters and a width of 118 meters, it's also much larger than modern stadiums. The Circus Maximus has a long history, dating back to the early days of Rome. The first version is believed to have been established under King Tarquinius Priscus around the 6th century BC, and later expanded by Roman emperors into the enormous structure you see here. At the center of the arena stood a long barrier known as the Spina, decorated with statues and obelisks. The main event was chariot racing. To keep track of the race, large markers shaped like eggs and dolphins were also placed along the Spina. After each lap, one of them would be turned, making it easy for both the racers and the crowd to see how many laps remained. Teams, known as factions, competed for glory in high-speed races around the track. Crashes were common, and the sharp turns made the races extremely dangerous. But the arena was home to much more than just chariot racing. Public celebrations, religious festivals, parades, and even exotic animals were shown to the crowds. Events here could last for hours, sometimes even days, drawing crowds from across the empire. The design of the Circus Maximus would go on to inspire similar arenas across the Roman world, known as circuses or hippodromes. One example was the Hippodrome of Constantinople, which once took up a large area of modern-day Istanbul. But what remains of it today? Over time, the structure fell into ruin. Stones were reused for other buildings, and the once massive stadium slowly disappeared. Today, the site is a large open field in the center of Rome. When I visited Rome a few months ago to do research, I found these clips showing how it looks today. And still to this day, large concerts take place in this arena. I really want to make a full video about the Circus Maximus one day. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in seeing that. Have you ever struggled to fall asleep on a plane? I have. But with today's sponsor, Manta Sleep, it's becoming a lot easier. Manta Sleep offers a wide range of sleep masks designed to improve your sleep, whether you're at home, in a car, or on a plane. What makes them stand out is how great they are to use. The masks use premium materials and create a completely pitch-black environment, making it much easier to fall asleep faster and sleep longer. This was really nice when I took a flight to Rome to do research. They also have different options depending on your needs. There's a cooling mask for warm nights, and a steam mask which is perfect for the winter, and of course the sleep mask with built-in Bluetooth speakers, perfect for listening to podcasts or music while you fall asleep. If you're planning a trip or want to improve your sleep quality, go to mantasleep.com and use my code LOSTINTIME for 10% off. Thanks to Manta Sleep for supporting the channel. Now, let's get back to the video. But Rome wasn't the only empire that built on a massive scale. Later in the video, we'll visit a place designed to impress kings and entire civilizations. But first, let's go even further back in time. This is the Ziggurat of Ur, a massive stepped structure rising above the flat landscape of ancient Mesopotamia. It was built over 4,000 years ago, around 2100 BC, by the Sumerian king Ur-Nammu. in what is today southern Iraq. But this wasn't a palace, and it wasn't built for crowds. It was built for the gods. At its base, the structure covered a large rectangular area made from millions of mud bricks. From there, a series of massive terraces rose upward, connected by wide staircases leading toward the top. At the highest point stood a temple. This was the most sacred part of the entire structure, where priests would perform rituals and offerings to the city's patron god. Unlike the arenas in Rome, ordinary people were not allowed to enter. The higher you went, the more restricted it became. When you look at the structure, it's incredible that they could build this over 4,000 years ago. The core of the building was made from sun-dried mud bricks, one of the most common building materials in the region. But to protect it from rain and erosion, the outer layers were covered with baked bricks, sealed with bitumen, a natural form of asphalt. This created a stronger outer shell, helping the structure withstand the weather in the area for centuries. Unlike many other ziggurats, large parts of the Ziggurat of Ur still stand. Although the temple at the top is gone, the remains of the massive base and its stairways survived. But like the Ishtar Gate in Babylon, some of what we see today is the result of modern reconstruction, with parts of the structure restored in the 1980s under Saddam Hussein. The ziggurat was made for the gods, but this incredible theatre in Greece was magical in a whole different way. Here, even a whisper on stage could be heard all the way in the back of the arena. But before that, let's travel to the heart of the Persian Empire. You walk up a wide stone staircase. As you look up, you see a massive gate protected by two large bull statues. You are about to enter Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Persian Empire. Built over 2,500 years ago, it was built to show power. Persepolis was where representatives from across the empire would gather. At the center of the complex stood the Epidaurus Palace, a massive audience hall supported by columns, some rising over 20 meters high. Leading up to the palace were staircases filled with colorful carvings. These carvings were designed to show the purpose of the building. On each side in front of the palace, people from different regions are shown bringing gifts like textiles, animals, and valuable items to the Persian king in the center. Each group is shown in its own style of clothing, making it clear they came from different parts of the empire. Around the palace was multiple other majestic buildings, like the Palace of Xerxes, a center for ceremonies and religious rituals, the Southeastern Palace, which served as a private space for the royal family, the royal treasury, which stored the goods of conquered nations, and the Hall of 100 Columns. But some of what made Persepolis unique was how it was built. Materials were brought in from across the empire: stone from nearby mountains, cedar wood from Lebanon, and skilled workers from different regions all contributed to its construction. For generations, Persepolis stood as the symbol of the power of the Persian Empire. But it didn't last forever. In 330 BC, 185 years after it was built, the city was captured by Alexander the Great and set on fire. Today, only parts of it remain. Some columns, staircases, and carvings have survived more than 2,500 years. Persepolis was incredible, but soon we'll visit a place that once tried to collect all human knowledge in one building. But first, let's take a look at something very different. He walks onto stage and stops at the small plateau in the middle. Then he takes out a coin and drops it on the ground. Almost like magic, the sound of the coin hitting the ground travels through the entire arena, all the way up to the people in the back. Somehow, even the people sitting on row 55 can hear it perfectly clearly. This is the Theatre of Epidaurus, the greatest theatre of the ancient world. In 360 BC, architect Polyclitus the Younger started the construction. The theatre was built into the natural slope of a hill, creating a perfect semicircle around the stage. Up the hill, they placed thousands of limestone blocks cut from local quarries. Originally, the theatre had 32 rows, but 23 more were added 2 centuries later, increasing the capacity to over 14,000 spectators. At the opposite side from the audience was a 2-story building playing multiple roles for the theatre. The wall was painted to act as a backdrop for the actors. It also enabled special effects where actors could be secured by rope and fly in above the stage. But the most impressive thing about the theatre was the acoustics, and this video demonstrates it perfectly. So, how did they do it? For over 2,000 years, nobody could explain it. Ancient Romans speculated it was the wind carrying the sound. Others thought the actors' masks worked as loudspeakers. It wasn't until 2007 that researchers at the Georgia Institute of Technology finally solved the mystery. It wasn't the slope or the wind, it was the seats. When sound leaves the stage, three things happen almost simultaneously. The direct sound travels straight to your ears, a reflection bounces off the hard limestone floor, and the stepped rows of seats scatter the sound both forward and backward toward every listener. These three things arrive so close together in time that your brain hears them as one single, louder sound. On top of that, the rows of limestone seats act as an acoustic filter, filtering out low-frequency background noise like wind, while reflecting the higher frequencies of the human voice back toward the audience. The hard stone helps too. If the seats were made from wood, much more of the sound would be absorbed, but with the limestone seats, it rather reflected the sound. The Greeks likely didn't know the physics behind it, but they had accidentally built one of the most perfect acoustic environments ever created. And even after more than 2,000 years, the theatre is still in use. Performances are held here to this day, using the same natural acoustics designed in ancient Greece. But while the Greeks mastered sound, something much bigger was taking place across the Mediterranean. In Egypt, an ambitious project began to collect all human knowledge in one place. You're standing on the deck of a ship, slowly approaching the harbour of Alexandria. As you dock, any scrolls or written texts found on the ship are taken and brought to the city's famous library. This is the Library of Alexandria. The idea of the library can be traced back to the founder of the city himself, Alexander the Great. After his death, that vision became reality under Ptolemy I, who began building the library. We don't know exactly what it looked like, and no detailed architectural descriptions have survived, but it may have looked something like this. But what happened inside the library is far more important. At first, the collection was built from Greek and Egyptian texts. Scholars were invited to live and work in Alexandria, financed by Ptolemy himself. But the goal was never just to collect a few books. They wanted everything. Alexandria had become one of the most important trade centers in the Mediterranean, and the library took advantage of that. Under Ptolemy II, a new rule was introduced. Every ship entering the harbor had to hand over any scrolls it carried. Inside the library, teams of scribes would carefully copy each text by hand, writing it word for word onto new Egyptian papyrus. This process could take weeks, and when it was finished, the library kept the original and returned the copy to the ships. At the same time, workers were sent across the Mediterranean, searching for more works to bring back to Alexandria. Slowly, the collection grew to around 700,000 scrolls. The vision of Alexander the Great had become reality. Alexandria was the center of all knowledge in the ancient world. The scholars living in Alexandria now had access to incredible amounts of scrolls from different cultures around the world. Here, Eratosthenes calculated the distance around Earth with surprising accuracy. Hero of Alexandria experimented with early steam-powered devices, and Ctesibius developed advanced water clocks, as I show in a different video. Knowledge wasn't just stored here, it was being created. But unfortunately, it didn't last. People often imagine a single moment, a great fire that destroyed everything. But the reality is far more complicated. In 48 BC, Julius Caesar set fire to ships in the harbor. Some of the flames may have spread to the city, damaging parts of the collection. But that was only one event. Over the following centuries, Alexandria was hit by conflict after conflict, invasions, civil wars, even natural disasters. And as the city changed hands, the importance of knowledge began to decline. What had once been a center for gathering and preserving ideas slowly lost its place. Do you think any other ancient wonders deserved a spot in this list? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, I also made a video about the 7 original wonders of the ancient world. If you've seen that already, the one on the right side should be perfect for you. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting the subscribe button.